is this thing on now? I've been working long like a marathon now. Tying up words, making them a bomb now. Tell me, who turned on the alarm now? I got a message, we didn't put it in a song now. I'll see you later, all the haters got it wrong now. We're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We're feeling inside, yeah. We got the power. Is everybody with me? It's time to get together, no more enemies. Throw your hands up, can you feel the energy? Yeah, come on, can you finally hear what this means? 20-something years been chasing down this street, running like a wild man, going since 15. Yeah, we're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We're feeling inside, yeah. We got the power. We got the power. Yeah, let's go now. We got the power. Let's get it. We got the power. Tell me, is this thing on now? I've been working long like a marathon now. Tying up words, making them a bomb now. Tell me, who turned on the alarm now? I got a message, we didn't put it in a song now. I'll see you later, all the haters got it wrong now. We're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We're feeling inside, yeah. We got the power. Is everybody with me? It's time to get together, no more enemies. Throw your hands up, can you feel the energy? got the power. Yeah, let's go now. We got the power. Let's go. We got the power. Tell me, is this thing on now? I've been working long like a marathon now. Tying up words, making them a bomb now. Tell me, who turned on the alarm now? I got a message, we didn't put it in a song now. I'll see you later, all the haters got it wrong now. We're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We feel it inside, yeah. We got the power. Yeah, come on. We got the power. Yeah, turn it up. We got the power. Come on, is everybody with me? It's time to get together, no more enemies. Throw your hands up, can you feel the energy? Yeah, come on, can you finally hear what this means? 20-something years been chasing down this street, running like a wild man, going since 15. Yeah, we're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We feel it inside, yeah. We got the power. Yeah, come on. We got the power. Woo. Yeah, get it turned up. We got the power. We're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. Feel it inside, yeah. Feel it inside, yeah. We're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We got the power. We got the power. Yeah, let's go now. We got the power. Let's go. We got the power. Tell me, is this thing on now? I've been working long like a marathon now. Tying up words, making them a bomb now. Tell me, who turned on the alarm now? I got a message, we didn't put it in a song now. I'll see you later, all the haters got it wrong now. We're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We feel it inside, yeah. We got the power. Yeah, come on. We got the power. Yeah, turn it up. We got the power. Come on, is everybody with me? It's time to get together, no more enemies. Throw your hands up, can you feel the energy? got the power. Yeah, let's go now. We got the power. Let's get it. We got the power. Tell me, is this thing on now? I've been working long like a marathon now. Tying up words, making them a bomb now. Tell me, who turned on the alarm now? I got a message when they put it in a song now. I'll see you later, all the haters got it wrong now. We're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We feel it inside, yeah. We got the power. Yeah, come on. We got the power. Yeah, turn it up. We got the power. Come on, is everybody with me? It's time to get together, no more enemies. Throw your hands up, can you feel the energy? Yeah, come on, can you finally hear what this means? 20-something years been chasing down this street, running like a wild man, going since 15. Yeah, we're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We feel it inside, yeah. We got the power. Yeah, come on. We got the power. Woo. Yeah, get it turned up. We got the power. We're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. Feel it inside, yeah. Feel it inside, yeah. We're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We got the power. We got the power. Yeah, let's go now. We got the power. Let's get it. We got the power. Tell me, is this thing on now? I've been working long like a marathon now. Tying up words, making them a bomb now. Tell me, who turned on the alarm now? I got a message when they put it in a song now. I'll see you later, all the haters got it wrong now. We're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We feel it inside, yeah. We got the power. Yeah, come on. We got the power. Yeah, turn it up. We got the power. Come on, is everybody with me? It's time to get together, no more enemies. Throw your hands up, can you feel the energy? is this thing on now? I've been working long like a marathon now. Tying up words, making them a bomb now. Tell me, who turned on the alarm now? I got a message, we didn't put it in a song now. I'll see you later, all the haters got it wrong now. We're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We're feeling inside, yeah. We got the power. Yeah, come on. We got the power. Yeah, turn it up. We got the power. Come on, is everybody with me? It's time to get together, no more enemies. Throw your hands up, can you feel the energy? Yeah, come on, can you finally hear what this means? 20-something years been chasing down this street, running like a wild man, going since 15. Yeah, we're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We're feeling inside, yeah. We got the power. Yeah, come on. We got the power. Woo. Yeah, get it turned up. We got the power. We're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We're feeling inside, yeah. We're feeling inside, yeah. We're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We got the power. We got the power. Yeah, let's go now. We got the power. Let's get it. We got the power. Tell me, is this thing on now? I've been working long like a marathon now. Tying up words, making them a bomb now. Tell me, who turned on the alarm now? I got a message, we didn't put it in a song now. I'll see you later, all the haters got it wrong now. We're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We're feeling inside, yeah. We got the power. Yeah, come on. We got the power. Yeah, turn it up. We is this thing on now? I've been working long like a marathon now. Tying up words, making them a bomb now. Tell me, who turned on the alarm now? I got a message, we didn't put it in a song now. I'll see you later, all the haters got it wrong now. We're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We're feeling inside, yeah. We got the power. Yeah, come on. We got the power. Yeah, turn it up. We got the power. Come on, is everybody with me? It's time to get together, no more enemies. Throw your hands up, can you feel the energy? Yeah, come on, can you finally hear what this means? 20-something years been chasing down this street, running like a wild man, going since 15. Yeah, we're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We're feeling inside, yeah. We got the power. Yeah, come on. We got the power. Woo. Yeah, get it turned up. We got the power. We're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We're feeling inside, yeah. We're feeling inside, yeah. We're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We got the power. We got the power. Yeah, let's go now. We got the power. Let's get it. We got the power. Tell me, is this thing on now? I've been working long like a marathon now. Tying up words, making them a bomb now. Tell me, who turned on the alarm now? I got a message, we didn't put it in a song now. I'll see you later, all the haters got it wrong now. We're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We're feeling inside, yeah. We got.
All right. Sorry about that, everybody. What a way to start. I had everything muted. My apologies. My name's Chris Murphy. I handle Unreal Engine in Australia, New Zealand, and Southeast Asia. And we have two other folks who are in on the chat, which is Alex and Tony. Tony handles territory management, and Alex is another evangelist. Alex, how are we going for audio this time? Is that working this time around? Because I sure hope so. So we're going to be running through this session. This is a live session.
You're loud and clear.
So this is a live session. Case in point, the slide boo-boo we just made. But we really want to make sure that we've got some actual chat going, some discussion going, and at the end of it, we're going to have a proper Q&A. Now, today's session is really just broad strokes overview, and I'll be honest with you, today's session is the only one that's really going to be a PowerPoint presentation. Everything after this is going to be webinars where we're actually developing live in front of everybody. But today's two sessions are kind of running through an overview of the challenge, an overview of the reasoning behind some of this, and where virtual production is, to kind of give people a better idea of both the state of Unreal and the state of virtual production and animation. So pretty broad presentation, but hopefully it kind of keeps everyone together. So as I said, today's topics are really kind of just that overview, who we are, Unreal Engine, what is it, going into real-time animation, virtual production, and of course, where to next. Now, when it comes to this, let's quickly step through the obvious. You can only have gotten into this presentation if you are part of the Unreal Short Film Contest, so you're probably familiar with most of this as it stands, but just to reiterate, so this is Australian applicants only. My apologies to any of the Kiwis or anyone else that lines up with our time zone that aren't able to participate in this one. But hopefully that you still get something out of the training. However, the contest itself is only available to Australian applicants. Now, for this, you create a pitch for a short film using Unreal Engine. The best candidates will be shortlisted, and the final winner will be chosen. And when the final winner will be chosen for every state, each state's winning candidates will receive 20,000 Australian to develop and produce their short film. Finalists will have their shorts judged, with the winner taking home a grand prize of 50,000 Australian, and participants should apply to the challenge via their state screen agency. Now, let's go over some of the key dates to make sure that everyone is really aware of where this stands. So first off, training is running from 11th till the 21st of August. Now, we're running 8 distinctive webinars. However, we're cycling them through in alternating time slots. So this week we have 8, and some of them are at 2 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, and the others are at, I believe, at 6:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. And then the next week, any sessions that were during work hours this week are going to be after work hours next week. And any sessions that were after work hours this week will be during work hours next week. Now, obviously, that's only for Australian Eastern Standard Time, but we felt this was a healthy compromise to help out as many folks as we could while still aligning with everyone else's potential time zones and how things have to link together, because it turns out Australia is a big place. Now, we're running our training from the 11th till the 21st of August, and the applications close on the 31st of August. Now, the applications themselves are actually open now. In a little bit, I'll be discussing, kind of what we're expecting and what we'd like to see. But keep in mind that you can submit anytime up until that point. Now, after this, the successful applicants will be announced 5th of October. Officially, production begins on the 19th of October, with the finished product submission on the 30th of November, and then the winner announced on the 14th of December. It's worth noting that, while officially production begins on the 19th of October, that's kind of when production begins, but if you've started fooling around or you've started working on anything before that date, that's totally fine. But that's the kind of official starting point. We're not gonna check your build history and make sure that all assets went in on that exact date or anything like that. So hopefully that's you can kind of plan accordingly as to when you feel is going to be best for your kind of project. But yeah, and that's it for our key dates. Now, as far as what we're expecting, the broad headlines that we have here for what we're expecting is for everyone. So creativity. So when we created this program, we kind of deliberately avoided certain limitations that would stifle creativity. And essentially, we're here to help you realize it. We want to see projects that are doing interesting things, whether it is animation directly, or whether it is in some way using end display or something like that. It's up to you as to how you're kind of fulfilling this creativity. Now, obviously, that means that we want to see some sort of vision. So creating something that you can work with going forward. Epic doesn't take equity or any rights to your creation, because we want you to be able to use your short film to go into something bigger, whether it's the same IP or something else in the future. But using this as like a firm understanding of where you could be going with this in the future is pretty important. Realistic planning, again, super important, because don't try and compress like a 12-minute short film into 5. Don't work unreasonable hours. Plan accordingly. We really want this to be something that you enjoy. And applicants, they're being cash flow for applicants means that you can focus on it, you can plan to it accordingly, and you can make reasonable decisions about how you should be proceeding for your projects. Right. This is a really important one, but just ask questions. We're here to help you. We have Tony and Alex in the chat at the moment, but at the end of the session, I'll hand out an email address that hits all 3 of us up if you do have questions. We're more than happy to field calls throughout this competition as well. So if you do want to have a chat, like if you think you've got your plan together and you're like, I'm pretty confident this is what I want to do, and I've got the right people to get this done, and blah blah blah. But I kind of want to sanity check this against someone who generally knows what they're doing, then feel free to hit us up. And, one of us is happy to have a call with you about how to kind of approach that problem. And of course, be smart, be safe. When we first conceived this idea, coronavirus was like settling in, and it was... The situation is, obviously always changing, and we want you to stay safe. So don't take any risks. If you want to, especially don't take any risks if you want to impress anyone, especially not us. So just before I get into the meat of Epic and Unreal Engine, I do want to just a quick apology for some of the chaos that ensued before this session came up. We expected a good response to this competition, but we didn't expect like 6 or 7 times the size of said good response. So what happened is we had an online learning platform that was all set up to handle a few hundred people, and when well over 1,500 people signed up for the training webinars, things had to change quickly, which is why we're all on YouTube today. So there is a chance that down the track, if depending on how the numbers go and how many people are actually attending the training versus signed up for it, that we will switch over to the intended learning platform that we wanted to use. But it was far more important to me that we have a slightly ad hoc way of getting things running today. The team wanted to make sure that everyone could participate. We weren't going to have people awkwardly kicked out because they joined at 2:01 or anything like that. So my apologies for some of that. But moving forward, we'll have a much better idea of how this all looks and how we can proceed. So to start with, a quick thing, let's just give you a better idea of Epic and Unreal Engine. And I'm gonna roll the clock back to 1991. With a game developed by Tim Sweeney and Epic, which was Potomac Inc. at the time, called ZZT. Now, this was an interesting project because it actually had its own integrated object-oriented scripting language, and it allowed like the community involvement that extended beyond simply creating level terrain with a built-in editor. I bring this up because this kind of mentality progressed through Epic's lifecycle. Now, the next really noteworthy project I want to bring up is 1998, which is with the rise of GPUs when we saw Unreal. Now, it's worth noting that Unreal was pretty ahead of its time, very pretty, but more importantly, Unreal itself was built on a framework of tools that was referred to as the Unreal Engine. Now, this technology over time has increased in fidelity, and not only that, it's also kind of moved to different platforms. You've got things like Infinity Blade, for instance, which was a mobile title, and of course it's increased in scope, it's increased in size over time, and Unreal Engine has always been supporting all of these projects. And to support all these projects, it's become a really comprehensive tool set. So what I mean by that is we've been, you've got full pipeline integration, you've got world building tools, animation, rendering, lighting, and materials, as well as like simulation effects, gameplay and interactivity. There's full platform support to push out to whatever you need to, integrated media support, and general developer tools. Like there is a lot in there because what's in there is what is necessary to get a game out the door. Now, I'm using the word game, but as we go on, hopefully you'll get a better idea that it's really more of a real-time set. But to give you an idea of what Unreal is, it's worth noting that it's free for creators. So what we mean by that is that if you're exclusively exporting images and video, there are no royalties attached. And you can check the EULA if you want to read over the fine print. For any software with a binary builds, there's a 5% royalty after your first $1 million of gross revenue per product if you're selling it as software or a game. And additional paid support is available from Epic Games as well, but for a lot of the time when people are using Unreal, it actually ends up being completely free. Now, what's kind of interesting about this, and what is worth bringing up for this whole discussion, is really just this idea of closed box versus open platform. When we consider your standard software, we consider your traditional software. You're thinking of fixed features, no control over the future, proprietary data, and limited third-party support. But with how Unreal is set up, users can actually recompile the entire engine. Not only can users recompile the entire engine, but that allows them to submit changes back to the engine, and they can add features and send us a pull request, and we can look at those kind of features and say, hey, this is great. This is something we would love to have in the engine. And we can kind of build these things on, and it means that it's not just our games that are contributing to the future of Unreal Engine. It's not just Epic's developers that are pushing that. It's the wider community as well. Now, to get into the topic that we're here today to really discuss, let's step away from games for just a moment, and let's consider the situation of film. So, if you look back in the pre-digital years of film, your directors and your DPs were the creative core of any real production, right? And a lot of things had to be done ahead of time because when you were shooting on the day, those things had to be there in whatever capacity they were. But as things kind of went on, digital effects kind of started to kick in, right? The 90s happened, and you had all of a sudden this push for green screening kind of kicking in, and we're all pretty familiar with the phrase "fix it in post." Now, with this progress, while we ended up with higher fidelity in a lot of ways, and some really interesting creative decisions that we couldn't take before, it also meant that a lot of things had to be done ahead of time and planned out ahead of time, and the pipeline really changed. Now, I want you to keep that mentality of how that pipeline changed and where that general control was, and that editorial side and the vision sat during production. I want you to keep that in mind for when we're discussing this next part. And that is that, well, what if we consider the game engine real-time engine? And what if we consider our game levels as virtual worlds? Now, I bring this up because the next logical question is, what if we filmed something there? And this is where Unreal Engine's tool called Sequencer comes in. Now, Sequencer is Unreal Engine's cinematic tool, and in this, it's kind of a hybrid between what a game would have inside of it with your traditional film tools. So the ability to kind of scrub through, view scenes, but then open those up and tweak them and edit them as you see fit, moving any actors around. I'm sure you've encountered a lot of this before. The difference is that when we do it in Sequencer, we're seeing it all happen with its final effects happening in real time. So really what we're seeing here is game engines meeting filmmaking. And while the initial use was animatics and previs, now it's in-camera effects, real-time VFX, and multi-user collaboration. And what's important to note about this is that creative center of gravity is shifting back onto the set. The other really important thing to note here is that as we start to have game engines sitting inside of the space of core production, we're starting to see the same level of fidelity, the same assets being pushed out across all mediums. And this means that there's consistency in your branding. So your images, your linear output, your movies, your interactive experiences are all actually using the same assets. They're using the same assets with the same rendering techniques. And what this kind of results in is just consistency across the brand, and that's a really, really important thing for a lot of clients. And that's a really, really important thing for a lot of visionaries, so keep this in mind. And just before I go into the rest of this, I want to clarify a term I've already started kicking around without really defining, but virtual production is essentially where digital and physical spaces meet in filmmaking. Now, when we look at virtual production, you've really got to consider where this kind of sits in the pipeline. And that is to say, it potentially sits across almost the entire thing. Your Unreal Engine can potentially be helping out in pre-production for previs. It can be helping out during production for various live action or LED wall in-camera stuff. And it can even be used in post-production for your final effects and everything else. So to kind of go into this, I want to step into a couple of use cases and a couple of examples. And the first of those is real-time animation. So let's take a look at a project called Zafari.
Just finished animation, and 10 minutes later I get to see the shot rendered. I'm in.
I've never worried so little about rendering on a project, ever.
I think my only regret is that it took us so long to say yes and do it.
So that was Zafari, and when you look at a project like that, made in UE, you can see this really high quality final effect that's coming out. But more importantly, is you're seeing an incredibly fast timeline on how many episodes they're able to produce. And if you look up on it, you'll see that there's some their ability to just have those happy accidents and things like that is obviously improved. So that the ability to kind of suss out different angles and have creative control. And I'll go into that in just a little bit. But first off, let's look at a typical animation studio pipeline. I bring this up because your creative hub, your editorial really kind of sits in that early stage. But after that, you're really pushing things off to various departments, and they kind of have to be pushing, scene to, one pass to the next pass to the next pass. So you never really have that. How do I phrase this? It's kind of like lining up dominoes. You set them all up, you push that first one, but really if you want to change things as you're in production, it is quite a lot of work. Now, a real-time animation studio pipeline is somewhat different, because what we're really looking at is we're looking at that creative control kind of shifting into Sequencer. Sequencer essentially becomes that creative hub, and we're looking at a lot of information being passed through where things are kind of passing through that editorial phase, but it means that there's much more control towards the end of the project. There's a lot more that can be done in engine. In this situation, your purple represents Unreal Engine side of things. So what does this mean? Well, this means that your next generation pipelines and what we're looking at here, first off, they're real time. So when you think of your rendering times, we're talking 33.3 milliseconds maximum per frame. If we want to render it at 30 FPS. So it needs to be able to be dynamically run and seen at a final quality on screen without a rendering delay. It needs to be interactive, so it needs to be able to be modified, expanded, or altered dynamically. It needs to be immersive, so you need to be able to provide a high level of engagement that's equal to or greater than current animation standards. Non-linear development is incredibly important on this side of things, so being able to iteratively develop without concern for a linear process. So having people working on different assets in the same scene at the same time, and not worrying about who's handing off what to next, or worrying about as little as possible, I guess. It matters because it needs to be customizable as well. So ideally, you want to have something where you can develop content that can be easily tweaked or fully modified at a director or a viewer's discretion. Now, I'm just going to quickly step through a couple of tools that really help for this kind of process. And the first of those that's built into UE is a tool called LiveLink. Now, LiveLink allows you to stream data straight into Unreal from other applications. You can essentially record animations live. So I bring this up because this means that you can run your motion capture straight into the engine. You could just be running Unreal in one window and seeing side by side while you're running, Maya in the other window, and you can actually, as you're animating, kind of see that result and what it looks like. And as you scrub through, as you can see in this video, you can kind of get a much better idea of the final result, especially since Unreal can, be running various effects or extra passes as required. The next one I want to bring up is virtual cameras. Now, virtual cameras, again, same way as LiveLink, it allows you to use your iPad or your iPhone or something along those lines to kind of stream in their location and their transformations. Now, what this means is you push the image back to the iPad and you've got yourself a camera inside the world. You can press the record button and then scrub through those actual tracks in Sequencer and see what you just recorded with your own hands. Again, these tools are built in, they're completely free. Next up is Control Rig. This is in its early days, I will warn you, but it is still coming along. It's pretty exciting to see. So this is our in-engine rigging. You can bake out animations as you need from within the engine now. You can set up your own rigs to animate these characters. The next thing, that was interesting, my slides, there we go. So the next thing to bring up is multi-user collaboration. Some folks aren't aware of this because it is a pretty new feature, but you can run the engine essentially in multiplayer now. So you're able to run someone in the regular editor and someone in the VR editor at the exact same time, and you can actually see each other moving through the world. Now, this is cool for games, but honestly, it's really, really important for virtual production because what you're able to do is have someone walking through the space that isn't really familiar with Unreal Engine. They're able to move through that space and see how things are set up. They're able to collaborate with one another, experiment with animations, with set design, with whatever it is that they need to, but they're working together. They're not just handing things off to each other, they're working together. And this being built and utilized is incredibly exciting for me as a developer. Now the next thing I want to touch on is just general film and television. So the use cases are pretty far and wide, with everything from virtual sets and VR scouting to previs, in-camera visual effects, digital humans, and final rendering. And one thing I want to touch on before I go any further, just as we're discussing film and television, is just UE4 has been used in over 120 film and TV projects since 2016. This isn't a strictly new thing, but it is very much taking off and the industry is really getting on board. Now, the first of these concepts I want to discuss is virtual scouting and previs. And by I want to discuss, I mean, let's take a look at someone who's gone down this road.
I came on John Wick as a concept illustrator. I was providing 2D concept art to design the look and the feel of the film. And when we read about a 3-story building entirely made of glass, a number of problems come to mind. You have the reflections, you have the actual structural design of something like this, then you have the look to figure out lighting, etc. So I basically started with concept art using CAD designs from a set designer. I was able to bring them into Unreal Engine so that we could explore it in VR. It became this tool that allowed us to visualize what this set looked like and also helped us to create the lighting and the design of this thing months and months before any decisions had to be made on the physical set. It was such an abstract set that having this kind of spatial relationship and visualizing it from that point of view had tons of value. This set became a hub in the art department. The actors, the directors, the cinematographers went into the VR model so that they could basically visualize everything that was going to be built and seen in the film. I can't imagine them doing this set without VR. This set went through a number of different budgetary designs. I was able to create different set designs within VR, and now suddenly they can see what they can live with and what they can't live with at the hit of a button, and that allowed us to get the set approved sooner than we normally would. When you first walk onto the physical set, it's a surreal experience. It was amazingly accurate. VR has this kind of ability to cross the 2D concept art threshold and set design threshold and give you a real feeling of what it's going to be like to be there, which is just an incredible disruption in this industry. I came onto the project, 2D artist, and in the end I was a VR developer. The guys at Epic have done an incredible job at making it an easily learnable program, and just being able to quickly and efficiently make something look good in such a minimal amount of time is incredible. So I feel like VR has a permanent place in design, film design, production design. But I also believe that the future is really bright for real time. Every single VFX artist that I know is asking about Unreal Engine, and the reason why is because there's the satisfaction of not hitting that render button, but just seeing it in real time. It's like heaven for a VFX artist.
So, oops, sorry about that, folks. PowerPoint's doing its thing again. Sorry, folks, it'll be 1 moment. Slack, there we go. All right. So yeah, you look at John Wick, you can see that setup phase going on. But what I'd like to do here is kind of step through some of the tools that are available to users in Engine that you can start taking advantage of to kind of suss out. Now, the first of those I want to discuss, if you're looking at this kind of thing, is virtual scouting. Now, virtual scouting is a plugin that you can enable inside of the engine, and essentially it's tools to give filmmakers like new ways to navigate and interact in virtual production environments, so helping them make better creative decisions. Now, your directors and your DOPs can easily find locations, they can compose shots, they can set up scene blocking, and they can get accurate representations of filming locations. So artists and set designers can experience a location in virtual reality while building it and use measurement and interaction tools to actually check distances and modify the world. It's also possible to capture images from the virtual world and use the images for the whole production team to kind of track decisions made during a VR session. So I can't stress enough, that these things are super cool. They are turned off by default, but you've just got to go into the plugins menu to turn them on. And they're really, really useful for a lot of different things, obviously we're talking about them in the concept of virtual production, but nothing stops you from using these in anything from event planning to anything else, it's really exploring a space virtually, setting up things, and having a consistent idea of how these should look. They happen to just be built around cameras. So using these for all sorts of things is pretty great. Now the next thing I want to quickly touch on is Take Recorder. So Take Recorder is a great system built in that allows you to basically do mocap straight into the engine, but, and this is the important bit, it allows you to just really easily do the same mocap over and over and over again. So you'd be like, take 1, take 2, take 3, take 4, take 5, and then in sequencing, you can kind of scrub through all of those different takes. You can see which one was the best, which one was, most representative. You could take certain elements from one take and then grab elements from another take. So you could grab the transform from one with the facial animations from something else and kind of mix these things up as you see fit, but Take Recorder is really, really powerful. Now the other little thing I want to bring up for set design and previs is the engine has full LiDAR support built in these days, so one of the cool things with that is you actually can bring point clouds in. So if you don't want to model something, but you've got the equipment, you can go to a physical location, map the thing out with LiDAR, and then bring that space into Unreal and model around it and extend upon it. Is it going to be the prettiest thing right out of the box? Not necessarily, but it will look pretty good, and it will be pretty representative of what the space is, and help you just immediately get going without all of those extra things. Now, the next thing I want to discuss is in-camera effects, more specifically in-camera virtual production. So once again, I'm going to hand this over to another set of people that have gone through this.
Part of what's been fun about collaborating on The Mandalorian with Lucasfilm and Disney is that we have been able to see through a few technical innovations and a few firsts that I think are going to have a lot of impact on the way television and movies are made moving forward. In partnership with ILM and Epic, we have put together a system whereby which we can have game engine, real-time render, and video wall technology coming together to create a backdrop for the big, beautiful world of Star Wars.
The volume is 21 feet tall, it's 75 feet in diameter, run by 7 machines, pumping the visuals onto the screen that's being created in pre-production and can be on the screen within 24 hours of being finaled.
It's incredibly impressive when you first walk out there because it completely surrounds your peripheral vision. And you really quickly forget that you're indoors and you're not out on some planet's surface. It feels like a real three-dimensional environment surrounding you because it is a three-dimensional environment.
You can allow your key creatives to all make decisions together so that the shots are captured entirely in camera, which allows for a better performance.
And what was so exciting about this is by bringing those people together, things started to click, and we started to realize, well, let's not just do green screen and interactive light. If we're going to design the whole set in game engine ahead of time, maybe we could have some in-camera effects.
Everything in the volume is designed to both light the actors and to be a background that we can directly photograph. So you end up with real-time final pixels in camera.
If you look at visual effects heavy films, you've got a film set and then it's going to go to post and it's going to get the world put in. Here we're considering all of that at the same time, and how do we create a background and foreground that live together on the volume harmoniously.
When we started to play with the idea of using Unreal Engine for virtual production, that's one of the things that Richard and John started to embrace, is that you've got this very dynamic world where you can have randomization of things and find the happy accident that gives you the perfect shot. Being able to see the actors point at things and see what they're looking at was pretty transformative. It gave everybody context, with the added benefit that if you want to move a mountain from there to there, you can do it instantly.
You could switch between the Iceland location to the desert location, all within the same day of shooting.
The ability to shoot a 10-hour dawn is extraordinary. To shoot any sequence where you say, oh, this world's not quite right, let's just move it a little bit. An extraordinary number of benefits and advantages for shooting in that environment. It's mind-blowing what that tool is.
What you see is really what you get. And that's something that really means a lot to filmmakers, especially those who have worked with a more traditional approach in the past.
Shots of character in a vehicle traveling through a complex environment is always very difficult to do believably on stage. LED screens are a wonderful solution to that problem, because what you're doing is you're taking this technique of image-based lighting that we've been using in computer graphics for years, and use it to light a subject.
And then we would do shoots where we would texture map real lit surfaces onto our game engine Geo, and so the camera could move anywhere. We would do interiors, like Werner Herzog's office. And then you started doing things like building sets into it, having half a spaceship with reflective surfaces. And so it became exciting because by the end of the season, it was like, let's start designing sets around what this could do well.
Just like the good old days.
With Star Wars, we're building on a rich legacy of innovation, and getting to partner with Jon Favreau to make his ambitious vision a reality, it's really a game changer for filmmaking.
every time I see that, I love it. I'll be honest. So what we're discussing here is in-camera effects. Now, when we look at in-camera effects, essentially what we're looking at is having these LED walls that are kind of sitting behind the foreground. So you've got in this scene the case of someone sitting on the motorbike, and you've got a basic environment that's there directly beneath them. But everything after this is now the screens in place. So this kind of general idea is a really exciting one to me, because yes, it could just be an LED wall that's filling the entire environment, but it could also potentially be just the windows that are being blocked out. So you could make an area seem much bigger than it is, or whatever else. Now, a couple of other things that are really useful for this general kind of concept, I'll go into those now. Now, the first of those I want to step through is remote control over HTTP. Now, this is really cool, and I say that in the nerdiest possible way, but essentially how this works is remote control over HTTP allows you to set up Unreal's controls to a basic web page. So you can create a really clean, simple layout for a web page, and then have those sliders affect things in Unreal. Now, you're probably like, all right, why is that cool? The reasoning behind that is that if you're on set and you have a bunch of people that have never touched UE before, and you want to give them a dial, or you want to give them, a couple of controls and be like, these are the things you can touch to get the scene right, but don't touch anything else, you can do that. Now, I really love this because it means that you can kind of keep the people who know Unreal having full control over their domain, while at the same time they can kind of hand out the tight controls that are necessary for specific people in specific roles that they can use on any device, because it's over HTTP, right? So nothing stops this from running on a phone or a tablet or whatever else it may need to be. And I think that's really cool, because it's a nice division of labor, and it means that you don't have to expect every single person on set to be an Unreal Engine specialist. Now, the next thing I want to look at here is N-Display. So N-Display is a technology that we have built into the engine that essentially allows you to run multiple screens, all synced with one another, running off of multiple machines. This means that you can have ultra-high resolutions for things like these LED walls, or in this case, at the concert, running with a massive dome around the outside. So N-Display is a really powerful technology, and it is kind of like the core for a lot of these physical sets that get built. The next thing to step into here is Composure. So Composure is a plugin that we have for real-time compositing in the engine. We can take the footage and we can do green screening or whatever else we need to use. But what's really cool is if we combine Composure with the previous N-Display technology, because then what you start looking at is something more like this, where in this case, N-Display is projecting the environment around the person, right? But directly behind the user, we see a green screen, and then we run that image back into Unreal to live composite the environment back in. And this is kind of meeting somewhere in the middle of the things that I spoke about earlier, because the bike now has correct reflections, but if they want to fix something in post later, if they want that environment to look a little bit more lively, a little bit more interesting, they've now got nice reflections on the bike, while simultaneously having something that they can potentially work with down the track. And I think that's really cool. As far as other tools and general discussion points for virtual production, look, there's a lot there, and I'm not going to get into all of them today. This was really just for broad strokes overviews. But pipeline integration is pretty important, and one of the things to look into is Datasmith. Datasmith allows just seamless data conversion straight from Max, Maya, Rhino, SketchUp, Revit, etc. It essentially kind of is made to automatically clean up and simplify these meshes. So if you're used to working with film assets, this is a nice way of kind of potentially automatically grabbing some assets and cleaning them up, lowering that poly count for different level of details for different views and those kind of things, and just kind of bringing it straight into UE without having to stress about it too much. One other thing that I really wanted to bring up for any potential filmmakers was USD. Now, USD is a format that was developed by Pixar that's now natively supported in Unreal. So you can kind of open USD with this USD project viewer. So if you do like that workflow, or if you have got an animation studio that's built around using USD, I strongly recommend you check out the support for USD in 4.25, our latest version. Now, the next thing that I wanted to touch on was Quixel. So, Quixel is a company that Epic acquired a little while ago now. It's been, I think it was the very end of last year it was. But essentially, Quixel has thousands of 3D and 2D assets in Megascans. And it's completely free for Unreal Engine users. So you can actually browse through these libraries that have been taken from photogrammetry. So these people have been going all across the world, scanning items all across the world. And what they've done is they've created this amazing library, but it's completely free for UE users. Don't get me wrong, other people can buy in on subscriptions for different toolsets too. But if you're using them in UE projects, you can just open that straight up with your Epic account and start experimenting. Now, one of the coolest parts of this is Quixel Mixer, which you just saw there on screen, which is the tool that allows you to actually do a lot of this painting yourself as well. So it's not just access to the library of Megascans, but the Mixer itself. Now, the reason I bring up Mixer is because you can get pretty creative with Mixer. So if you look at this asset in Mixer, it's like, all right, that looks pretty cool. But what if we got this Megascan asset and we changed the rock type? Or we made it stylized, So Quixel Mixer allows you to kind of get these things and rework them as you see fit. And I strongly recommend checking out this suite of tools because it can save you a lot of time and fill in a lot of gaps and allow your artists to really just focus on the stuff that matters. They can focus on the really core important things while, but also they can use these to they can just leverage off of these for those assets too. Which is really, really powerful. Now, let's have a quick look at some of the sessions that are coming up throughout the next 2 weeks. Okay, so just a quick overview of some of the webinars that we're running. So the first of these is interior environments. So we're going to be going through Unreal Engine, just the control fundamentals, so just how to move around the scene, how to work your way through the editor, how to set it up, etc., etc. The basics of just blocking out an environment, of meshing, of static lighting fundamentals, blueprint basics, which is our scripting language, material fundamentals, how to leverage Quixel. Alex will also be running you through the basics of ray tracing, and in general, it'll just be a whole lot of useful tips and tricks. So this will be a live webinar that as we kind of go along, you'll see me actually building this environment from scratch. I'm not gonna just tell you that it's great and then just pull out here's one we prepared earlier. So hopefully you can see just some of the workflow techniques that really go into building these things, and I'll walk you through as much of the basics as I possibly can while we're doing it. After that, getting a little claustrophobic, we're going to move into a slightly nicer outdoor environments. It won't look as pretty as this one in the right-hand screenshot, but it will look quite pretty. So we're going to be creating large open worlds. We're going to look at the landscape tools. We're going to look at the foliage tools. We're going to look at procedural foliage tools, which is really cool because we've got some tools built in that allow you to say, hey, this tree spreads this many seeds and the seeds spread this far, and those seeds can only grow in direct sunlight and they can't grow in the shade. And it then literally will just plant a forest, which is really cool. So we'll be stepping through some tools like that and how to leverage them to just quickly get scenes together, which I love. As well as that, we're going to be looking at just generally, again, leveraging Quixel for these kind of environments. And as well as that, I'll be going through just the basics of lighting an outdoor environment and how you might want to set something like that up. After that, we have Intro to Sequencer. So this is going to be broad sequencer overview. We're going to discuss using takes, setting up sequences, setting up cameras, general camera settings, and I'll be stepping through VCam as well. So I'll be using an iPad to kind of take a couple of these shots. It's worth noting that this is definitely the session that I am the most scared of, because something about running OBS into my machine while running Unreal, while running a virtual camera to take things, there's just so many points of failure. So wish me luck, but it should go well. But that'll be the intro to sequencer session. That should be good. And we're following it up with, I'm actually pulling in someone else for this session, which is the advanced sequencer and animation. So this is kind of looking more at Alembic caches, import pipelines, live link, control rig, and facial animation. Cool thing with the facial animation is that once again, you can use an iPad or an iPhone for it. So you can do some really cool stuff, just capture your own facial expressions straight into UE. We have an intro to scripting. So intro to scripting is going to be going through project setup, a general overview of blueprints. It's going to go through blueprint development and design principles, building interactive assets, AI basics, playable character fundamentals, and building environmental tools, as well as editor utility widgets. Now, I know I threw a lot of words at you right then, but the important thing to know is this. By the end of the scripting session, the idea is for you to have a basic idea of how to set up some playable characters or some AI with proper animation blending. The reason that's really useful is that you can capture those animations from a playable character directly into Sequencer. So a cool thing about that is that because it's a game engine, nothing stops you from like piloting a vehicle and doing some cool tricks through an environment, right? Recording everything that vehicle did and then going back and piloting the chase vehicle and then piloting another chase vehicle and in separate takes recording all of those things back again and again and again and layering them on top of each other until by the end of it you've got 10 different vehicles in a massive car chase that are all actually just you in multiple takes, and they all work well because they're all just following off of like physics in the engine and they're all set up and you can then tweak them afterwards. So I know this stuff sounds like you're probably like intro to scripting, that's for nerds, but in all seriousness, being able to really leverage that stuff can save you a massive amount of time. Like I was working on a project one time where I remember someone was like, hey, we need a bunch of birds flocking. And it was quicker in Blueprint for me to spend 5 minutes to slap together some bird AI that would just flock intelligently than it was for me to create a bunch of different birds and make them move around and keyframed in some intelligent way. So, you can save a lot of time this way. And finally, editor utility widgets. It's going to be Alex running you through that. But it's essentially how to build your own tools using visual scripting. So you can set up some really cool stuff, really simple, and step through that for whatever suits your pipeline the best. Next up, we have Intro to VFX. So I'm going to be running through Cascade versus Niagara visual effects, just a general idea of how particles work and how this is structured within Unreal. I'm going to be covering Niagara fundamentals, so things like explosions and lightning and particles. This effect on the right is pretty cool. So we actually have a camera flying through the world, and whatever the camera sees, we recreate dynamically as a hologram, which is, I think it's cool. So, doing these kind of effects I think is really exciting, and I think this kind of session will be quite a lot of fun for anyone coming into real-time VFX. And finally, we're going to do a session that's on technical art. So technical art is us kind of covering the advanced materials, advanced VFX, and just leveraging things like render targets. So we're going to look at interesting stuff we can do under the hood, and I think that's going to be really great as well, because again, it's just getting your shader artists kind of making things look however you need the project to look. So what about after this, these webinars and everything else? So the first thing I want to draw attention to is Unreal Online Learning. So this is a free website. You just go to learn.unrealengine.com. We have hundreds of hours of free content that's just course after course. And, if you click on any of these things, so if I click on that stylized renders with post-product materials, this is literally a course filled with just stuff, filled with just video after video after video. So I recommend checking this one out. Another one that's really great to check out is the Unreal Engine virtual production white paper, which is a white paper based on an early cinematic trailer developed as a Fortnite trailer. This is really cool. It has a breakdown on tools, formats, and workflow for developing the cinematic. Now, it's a little out of date because it was made in mid to late 2017, but it still has a wealth of content for newcomers. The other one to draw attention to is the Virtual Production Field Guide. So the Virtual Production Field Guide you can also download. It's just an overview. It's got common setups and general information for newcomers to virtual production with stories from pretty prominent industry figures, and it'll help give you a better idea. Now, outside of this competition, I wanted to flag mega grants. So mega grants are a $100 million fund to support developers doing amazing things with Unreal Engine. So the idea here is it's no strings attached money. It's not an investment. We're not like, hey, we'll give you 20K and you'll give us that back eventually. It's more of, we'll give you 20K, you do something cool with it, and then we'll give you a thumbs up because it's great. So the Maker Grant system is pretty great. We're giving away, like I said, $100 million over a 5-year period. And anyone's welcome to check it out. You just need basically either a build or a nice video to show off what you're making and where you want to take it. Projects obviously don't apply for all $100 million. That is $100 million collectively, but it's pretty nice to get 20, 30, 40,000 US for a project that you're working on to kind of take that edge off and make something unreal. Just a note as well. So UE5 is in development at the moment. We've shown off the first videos of this, which I didn't want to restream through my laptop because I feel like I'm not doing the actual video justice and someone would get grumpy with me. So go check it out yourself on YouTube. But UE5's got some amazing stuff. It has fully dynamic real-time global illumination. We have a thing in it called Nanite, which allows for virtualized geometry, which allows you to just have like film quality assets with like billions and billions of triangles running in real time. It's specialized audio, virtual textures. It's pretty amazing. And it's worth noting that like UE4 projects can convert over to UE5, so that transition path allows us to kind of you can start developing now, and when UE5 comes out, if you had a film that was still in production, you could theoretically move it over to the latest and greatest and start migrating those tools in. And as I said, it's just really pretty. Okay, so if you need more information, you can contact the ANZ team here at SFC-ANZ. So that's the short film contest for the ANZ team. That's just at epicgames.com. And now, with that said, I'm gonna switch over to the Zoom chat so we can have a bit more of a Q&A with Tony and Alex running as well. So let's switch this over. Oh. Okay. Okay, that should be switched over. Alex, there's you and me. There's no Tony at the moment. Looks like he's dropped from our Zoom call, but that's fine. I'm sure he'll join us eventually. So, Alex, can you hear me now?
Sorry, I've got a...
Oh, sorry, folks. Sounds like we've had a technical drop. One moment.
My audio has unfortunately dropped out, and I need to force this. Okay, I'm good now.
You good
Sweet.
now?
Yeah, unfortunately halfway through my headphones dropped out, so I had to change it in Zoom.
That's great.
Excellent.
It's always that extra thing. So you've got questions up on screen, and you're able to start kind of working through some of these?
Yeah, so we actually answered most of them, but the main one was from Voxel Vagrant, and he was asking, are we able to learn some of the best practices for in-display to composure referenced in the video?
Unfortunately, I'm not going to be touching in-display as any of my webinars. If you want to get Q&A on that, we can open up a discussion on that separately. And honestly, I think it's probably a good chat for us to have about potentially looking at having either further training or video material that we can link people to. I know there's a couple of folks that have some really great content on that already, such as like Matt Workman has some really good stuff. So you could look at some of those, but the current plan is to not have any live training on that one. I'm sorry.
And the next question is something quite related. And is there a session related to, this is from Software Reviews, is there a session related to the set extension and chroma key based workflows?
All right, I can see a pattern emerging here. I'm not sure if this is like a grand conspiracy and Alex is just throwing those questions at me. Currently, there's nothing slated for those at the moment. I could discuss it with the advanced training team and the advanced sequencer training webinar team that we have coming in to see whether they're potentially able to cover it. But I really can't promise anything on that front at the moment. I'm sorry.
And that's the thing as well, is we'll be having along the process a few later on, maybe a couple of other webinars that we might set up or something like that, where, as Chris mentioned, we can get the advanced projects team to come in or something like that. But we'll have a chat and see what we can do.
Any other questions that are not about composure or in display?
So far, not that I can see. We've answered most of them in the chat. Though they're asking if they can rewatch these videos somewhere. So what I'll be doing is I'll be trimming the videos after this, because obviously there's a massive long introduction of 30 minutes of the replaying videos. So I'll trim them, and then I'm sure that we can send them out to the relative screening agencies, sorry, and then they'll be sent out then.
Cool. All right. So, I mean, if there's any other questions, now's the time to kind of jump into them. By all means, we've got time. So let us know if there's anything that you really want to know. So it seems like Tony may be joining us in just a moment. But if there's anything else that you really want to know, now's the time to ask. We are running another session later tonight. So I just want to clarify, just for anyone that's unfamiliar, the session tonight at 6:30 AEST is going to be the same presentation with hopefully fewer bumps in the road, because this was definitely a learning curve. But as we run that session, there's Tony. As we run that session, it will be the same general content. So unless you come back and you're like, oh wait, I have something I really want to throw into the Q&A, don't feel like you need to do this one and tonight's session. However, for the rest of the week, every session that we're running is going to be a different session in every time slot. So, we will have the interior environments, and then later that day, exterior environments. Intro to sequencer, advanced sequencer, VFX, tech art.
So, another questions that are coming in is where can people in the community jump in and have a chat and share ideas and stuff like that? I've actually dropped in a Discord link to the Unreal Engine Oceania Discord. It's a community-based server. What we can do is add a little channel specifically for this challenge, and we can add people to that as necessary. And get people chatting there and constantly talking about the challenge. Should be cool.
The Discord's a great starting point. I would strongly also recommend you check out the Facebook Unreal Engine Virtual Production Group. I want to be clear here that it's pretty rare that I recommend a Facebook group. There be dragons, but in the case of the Unreal Engine Virtual Production Group, it's a really great group of people asking really great questions, and it's a really solid little community going on there. I highly recommend checking that one out. And as I said, we had an online learning system set up for these sessions that we decided to nuke on the Friday because our numbers were literally several times higher than the capacity of it. Because I didn't know about the capacity until Thursday night, unfortunately. So unfortunately, that was going to be kind of a bit better for facilitating some of those discussions. But in the meantime, I would say the Oceanic Discord, the Unreal Engine forums, and the Unreal Engine Facebook group are a really good place to start.
And the Unreal Engine docs. Don't forget about them.
Oh, and the Unreal Engine docs. Sorry, yeah, I will get shot by some of the devs if I don't mention the docs. The docs have some really, really, really quality stuff in there these days. When Unreal was really exploding in popularity, initially, the docs team was having a pretty serious time catching up. So there can be a little bit of a stigma, but honestly, in the last year or two, there's been some really, really good material popping up in those docs. And if there's something you're after, in particular, about which direction to look for certain things, at the end of every webinar, I'm going to do my best to run through further resources on the topic and just where you can find out more information. So when we have that stuff, hopefully that helps a little bit too.
Yeah. And Chris, we've got a question from Scott Squires. Are there any downloads required for the talks?
For the talks, no. Assuming that we stick with YouTube based on view accounts, then you'll need an internet browser. If it's going to be if we do end up switching back to the LMS, it should still just be broadcast straight through your browser as well. So I think regardless, it should be fine. There shouldn't be any real downloads required. It's just, as I mentioned before, when it comes to following along with the webinars, it's going to be me building. Now, the important part of noting this is that I'm going to be building and I'm going to be describing what I do, and I am going to be building from scratch. However, with the expected several hundred participants at any given point, it won't be follow along with Chris kind of a situation. I'm going to be building everything with free assets though, so you will be able to potentially look at doing this yourself in your own time and investigating those assets. However, it won't be kind of me building and then be like, has everyone followed along? Otherwise, with that many people, we only move as slow as the slowest person on the team. So if anyone has tech difficulties, that can really hold everything down, unfortunately. So it depends on whether you meant software for following along or software for viewing, but hopefully I've answered both sides of that question.
Also, Brothers Robertson asked if there's any good place to learn Unreal Engine in general, and I've actually dropped in a link to the online learning site that we have. It's just in the YouTube comments there, but look up Unreal Engine online learning and you'll see it. It's also learn.unrealengine.com.
Super easy to get to. There's some really great stuff there. It has some funny little things in it, like achievements and things and badges. So whenever you've finished a course, it'll actually say, hey, this person's finished that, which is kind of good, especially if if you've got a team that's going through it, you can be like, all right, hey, has everyone finished these things? And there is a certified, yes, we finished the quizzes associated and stuff. So that's kind of good because there's nice little tests for testing your learning and things like that too.
And Alison Thomas asks, in terms of the videos, if we are just here for the training, will the videos be sent for those who are not doing the challenge and are not with the screen group?
Yes.
Okay, Tony answered that.
Yep. Yeah, why not? I mean, you've joined us, so yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So if you're on this list, then you should be able to get the email sent out afterwards when we've trimmed this video.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that answers that. What we might do though is instead of giving out all 16 sessions, it's probably easier for us to just pick the best of each of the sessions. So you'll get 8 videos coming out. It'll just be the one that I already knew how to use OBS on versus the first one where I spoke to all of you for 30 seconds without sound.
And we don't have, for me, 30 seconds looking dumb while I figure out my mic and headphones.
So my apologies, folks. But hopefully, we'll do our best to distribute the correct ones. Any other questions kind of coming through at the moment?
Is there a resource available to find freelancers available to work on projects?
It's a great question. For resources, I would suggest reaching out through the Unreal Engine Australia Facebook group. That's pretty popular. There's a lot of freelancers floating around there. Otherwise, honestly, the Oceanic Discord is pretty high quality. There's also I believe there's a job listings thing in the forums that you could potentially post in as well. That might be a good source. If you're after freelancers, it's not a bad idea for. If you're after freelancers, feel free to email that address, the sfc-anz@epicgames.com email address that I put earlier. Obviously, don't hit me immediately, but once you've got a good idea of the kind of folks that you think you'll need, and if any freelancers happen to contact us to say, hey, they're looking for a project, we might be able to help facilitate that. I may have just dobbed us in for a whole lot of work. I can see Tony starting to frown. Is there a better approach to that you can think of, Tony?
No, that's all good.
Okay. Try and do it once you've got an idea of what it is. But my preference would obviously be reaching out to those groups first, because you'll get vetted developers, and that might be a good way to start. As we go on, we'll look for a nicer mechanism to do so, and I'll do my best to try and have something together for that. But that should about do it. Any other questions?
This is one that I can answer, but Kelly DJ asks, anyway, to get a certificate after confirmation of online training, is there any way of getting a confirmation of online training for CVs and stuff? On the online learning, I'm actually pretty sure you can export your an embed link to the online learning achievements, and you could totally put that on your online CV or something like that. Now there was another question that I've lost in the mix. Jack Wolf asks, does a lot of this competition training around having a team? That might be for Chris.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really great question. And honestly, I've seen some really extraordinary stuff get put out by a single person. I've seen some really extraordinary stuff get put out by a single person, and I've seen just as, obviously absolutely incredible stuff be put together by entire teams. Now, I think the really important thing here is just being realistic in that initial pitch is super important. So being really realistic in that initial pitch about what you're trying to achieve, how viable you think it is to achieve, and whether you think it is a one-person job, or whether you think that it's going to be a team. Just going into it with the right mindset, and in that pitch document to screen agencies, being able to justify that, yes, I think one person can handle this because I've done this before, or I have experience doing this, or whatever it may be. That would probably help. Tony, do you have anything that you'd like to add there?
No, I completely agree. It's be realistic. We didn't create this thing to put a lot of pressure on you. So work within the confines of the program, work within the confines of your abilities. Our job is to help you not only now but along the way as well. So yeah, just ease into it.
Cool.
Now, I'm gonna target Tony for this one. Is there a plan to restage this competition, and are there any plans for a short film challenge in Europe?
I can't answer to Europe. So this was kind of our idea, and it's become sort of a test idea. So if it works and it goes well, yeah, I can see Epic opening up. This really was the ANZ team going to Epic and saying, hey, we want to do this for our community. Can we? And Epic coming back and going, yeah, go for it. So we did. I can't answer. I think if it goes well in this region, I would want to repeat it, definitely. And I probably want to expand it out a bit more to include New Zealand and the like for the ANZ community. But yeah, I see it happening again if it all works out.
Cool. Now, is there a live link with Houdini at the moment? I think there might be one provided by Side Effects, but I'm not 100% sure because I don't use Houdini.
I'm not qualified to answer that one. I haven't fooled around with Houdini, so I'm sorry about that. I may need to hit Google.
Keanu Hui asks, are both virtual production using green screen, etc., and purely animated projects eligible for the short film grant?
Tony?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing for us is there has to be a UE component to it. The concern that immediately leaps to mind when we're talking about green screening, and it is dependent on your location, is we do not want you at any point to be in a position where you're endangering yourself and others, especially while the pandemic's going on. So, as much as humanly possible, do everything online, work remotely, please. We don't want people taking unnecessary risks just for this project. It is absolutely eligible, but please be careful.
Now, a slightly bigger question, this is probably for Tony as well. What's the best way, this is from Oliver Ma, what's the best way for determining the budget for our projects? Would we need an initial investment to get the project started before pitching to our state's agency?
No, absolutely not. Please don't invest. The idea is we want to invest in you. So it really is preparing what your idea is, what your pitch looks like, what you can do with the production funding that you'll be provided. We're not expecting you to throw a whole bunch of time, money, and resource at this just for the pitch stage. Find a cool way to convey your idea, and we'll take it from there. And you're talking to a company that we are creators, so you're talking directly to people who understand what it is you're trying to do. We don't need necessarily all the flashy stuff for you to sell your idea to us. So don't go overboard. We get it.
Now, there's a question from Matt Burr. He's asking, actually, it's 5 minutes max, but is there a minimum for the video? And yes, it's a 90-second to 5-minute video that you need to produce. Cameron Whiting asks, any tips for pitching in our state screen agencies, like what to contain? Are there resources for that?
I don't know if there's necessarily resources, but pitch the same way you would to the screen agencies. Again, the most important thing is convey your idea. Make sure we understand it. Make sure we can get into your heads. That's all we need to see. We'd be recommending exactly the same thing if you're applying to the Mega Grants program as well. Just give us clarity on what it is you want to do. There's a whole bunch of very experienced film and TV people in LA who work for Epic now that are going to be part of this assessment process. So you're talking to people with a ton of experience.
Oliver Ma asks, do all the team members have to be in from the same state or just the key creatives?
Oh, no, I mean, whoever applies, you would need to look at the terms and conditions from the screen agencies themselves. Quite a few have a recommendation or at least some criteria that X percentage of your team must be within state. So that's not something we can dictate, but it will be dictated by the guidelines of each screen agency.
I can say from at least Screen Queensland, they generally do prefer people from within state. But yeah, definitely check out your local screening agency. Now, there's potentially a couple more questions. What are the rules in terms of compositing? Are we able to shoot live action talent and integrate with the UE renders? I would totally say yes. As long as your final product is using UE in the result, then I would totally say go for it.
Is that, so they're saying do live action and then doing the compositing in Engine? Is that what they were specifically saying?
Or a combination.
I think, Tony, do you have the exact guidelines on that one?
I do not.
Okay.
So I'll defer to your knowledge on that one.
Yeah, Alex, you may need to, just to clarify on the question. So if it's saying that the final output is from Unreal?
Yeah, so are we able to shoot live action talent and integrate with the UE renders?
I believe so. It depends on where the final pixels are coming out of. I think there is a requirement for the final pixels coming out of UE, aren't there, Tony?
Yes.
Yeah, so it depends on how they're doing that composition and integration, I guess. And obviously, like, you know, they're going to have to... This challenge is set up to kind of facilitate using Unreal for the right ways. So it really depends how much live action versus how much is being done in Engine. Kind of a situation, you know, like if Unreal's being used for just the text pop-ups and the rest of it's live action, that's one thing. If on the other hand they're using it to integrate actual footage into it for, you know, as the scenes are going on and it's directly compositive, that's a different kind of story. But I think we have to, the original shortlist will be looked at by the screen agencies and then by us. So that kind of use of Unreal, I think, will just generally weigh into consideration.
Also, there was another question about learning Unreal if you haven't used it before. I'll put the link in for the online courses again. Check it out. Now, the final decision on pitches, does Unreal or the screen agencies make the final selection?
Epic does. It'll be in both the initial assessment for the production round and the final winner will be done by Epic.
Sweet.
I'm trying to read through all this stuff.
Yeah, sorry guys, it's a wall of text. Cool. I think, yep. Hi guys, question about the dates. Application is the application date and production date's the development of the pitch project or the actual short film project.
The production days are for the actual short film project. Yep, that's the 6 weeks, although we anticipate you're probably going to have started before that, which is absolutely fine. But yeah, that's to deliver the actual short film. So it's not a lot of time. We got that part, which is why we're saying, please be realistic with what you're trying to produce. As Chris said right at the top, don't turn a 12-minute short film into a 5-minute. You'll burn out. Just take it easy.
Now, a bit of clarification, because I've noticed it in the comments a couple of times, but this is for Unreal Engine 4. I know everyone's absolutely excited for UE5, but that's not out yet. Keep watching our space. The announcements and stuff and the public release will be sometime next year. So keep an eye out for that. But this project obviously will only be able to be using UE4. Now, Cameron Moser asks, just to be clear, can we get the rendered shots from UE and do editing color grade in an NLE?
No, the final pixels are meant to be coming out of UE, I believe, is one of the specifications, isn't it, Tony? Yeah.
And to add on to that, obviously we have a post-processing pipeline in the engine. So you might actually find you could do a lot of that color grading, like LUT tables and stuff like that you would normally do in, say, Premiere or another tool like that. You could totally do in engine. Once again, any tips for those of us coming in with absolutely no experience? Definitely check out the docs, YouTube, online learning. There's a link just above.
I would strongly recommend, just straight off the bat, opening up the Unreal Engine launcher and looking at a section called the Learn tab. Now, the Learn tab has just project after project after project that you can download and rip apart. Now, the reason I bring this up is because you can examine realistic rendering in one of the projects. You can examine sequencer in one of the projects. You can examine the content examples, which is really useful. The content examples project in the Learn tab is a great breakdown of every feature in the engine. Well, not every, but a lot of them in like a museum style exhibit where you can just move from one to the next, to the next, to the next. So by kind of looking at that ahead of time, when you're looking at that in conjunction with your learning, it allows you to really have a more practical kind of application of what it is that you're hearing about and what it is that you're learning about. I don't know about the rest of you, but I personally learn a lot more when I have something to rip apart and examine, like how it was put together. And for that, those projects and content examples are incredible.
So there was a question about OS X versions of UE. OS X should be fine with all UE versions. We go through a QA process on there. So 4.2.5 should work from there. If you have any questions specifically about that, you can ping me on alex.stevens@epicgames.com if you have issues specifically on that end. I'll drop it in the chat just here. We've got a question from Coiner. Is this curriculum similar to the upcoming 21st of August 2020 Unreal Fellowship, and when will that class be announced?
I can't tell you about their training specifically. While our training was basically developed by us specifically, we've looked at some of the stuff that they're organizing, but it will be distinctive classes from one another. It'll be a bit different. So if you're looking at going down that pathway, don't feel like you're going to be catching the same content twice, because it'll be from different people.
Yeah. Now, another question, did the credits have to be done in UE2?
It's a good question, but I mean, we do text overlay and we do everything else. So, I mean, the final pixels are coming out of Unreal. Come on, folks.
Now, are there any examples of online shorts you recommend watching to get an idea of what is possible in the time frame, budget, as far as simplicity and execution goes?
Yeah, cool. Online shorts, there's quite a few that I've seen pop up in the Unreal Virtual Production Facebook group, but I can't specifically list the creators of them off the top of my head. I'm sorry. That's really funny. So I can't link to any specifically right now, but if you are tuning into the later session, I can extend these slides to have a couple of references for example pieces that were put out. That said, I think we have done some spotlights on a few of them that Tony might be able to call out. I'm putting you in the hot seat here, buddy. But
I'm just trying to think. The ones that immediately leap to mind would be Quixel's Rebirth, Boy and His Kite,
Ada,
Blue Zoo's Ada. I'm racking my days.
In general, looking at things like the Safari episodes, so we do have a breakdown of a bunch of like we have interviews and blogs on different things. So looking at the Safari team have a blog. The Ada has a blog post. There's a few others that are going around. If you go to, I think is it unrealengine.com/virtual production? I think it has some nicer examples that you can link to directly from there.
If that is it, I'll just confirm. While we get that up, yeah, no, that's not the link, unfortunately. We'll have to maybe email it out or something.
You can check it now, just in background. It is. We have a specific virtual production. I thought it was /virtual production. It might be /VP or something.
Essentially, yeah. Now, another question from Jason Smart. I may have missed it in the course outline, but what sort of character animation workflows will be discussed in the training?
That's a good question. So the first sequencer demo is going to just go into if you've got the animations, here's how to leverage that. The second sequencer session is going to discuss coupling it with live link and getting data coming straight in. So that'll be live linking, I believe, Maya, straight into UE to show you how you can be doing your animations there and recording them as appropriate.
I've also dropped in the virtual production link. It's unrealengine.com/programs/virtual-production. Check it out in the chat there. Are these webinars, this is Vasilios Mustafas, are these webinars going to focus more around animation, live action film, or a mix of both?
It's definitely focusing more on animation. So it's focusing on predominantly kind of working through animation style pipelines. That said, a massive chunk of what you would need to do for the rest of it would be taken from here, and should still be able to help you along the way.
John Power asks, is there an expectation that the films contain characters, or could it be a short documentary?
I mean, that sounds cool. I don't think you have anything ruling it out.
The one thing you have to be mindful of with the agency's eligibility criteria is documentaries aren't actually allowed. So no, it doesn't have to contain a character. But yeah, just be mindful of that one stipulation, because documentaries, I think, for the screen agencies fall into different program groups. So yeah, just check it out. We'd be relatively okay with it, but I'm not sure the programs would accommodate it.
Nathan Stone is a follow-up question. Just to clarify, we want to shoot live action talent green screen and comp into completely UE environment using Nuke. Most people won't have access to an LED wall.
So, yeah, if you're comping in using Nuke, I don't think that will qualify, because the final, I think one of the criteria is final pixels coming out of the engine. So the comping would have to be done in engine.
And just following up from Nick Crowhurst's comment or question about clarification over the live actors and project the green screen or display, totally fine to use that as long as the final render is coming out from Unreal Engine, like what Chris just said. In terms of assets, would using something like Paragon assets be okay to tell a story? I feel this is a question for Chris.
Yeah, that's fine. For anyone that's unfamiliar with it, Paragon was a game that Epic Games had in development and released, but it was unfortunately had to be sunset, and when it was, all of the characters were put onto the marketplace for free. So there's just dozens of really high quality characters that are all rigged up and complete with all of their animations and effects and everything else just sitting there.
It's like millions of dollars of assets too. They're super high quality and amazing. Definitely check them out regardless of whether or not you're going to use them, because they're great, I guess, insights in how sometimes you might want to implement something. And adding on to that, content examples under the Learn tab are excellent resources, especially for quick little snippets of examples.
Cool. Any other questions to about wind it up?
I think that's pretty much it.
Great.
Yeah. Oh, actually, one from Holly Arsenal. Chris, can you make the completed projects you build for this training downloadable afterwards so we can look at them, pull them apart, and learn from them?
I can try to. There's certain EULA issues in doing so, because if I just put a zip online, it needs to have certain conditions with you, because it's redistributing Unreal Engine assets from a separately accepted EULA. I need to make sure what the deal is. But I'll do my best to try and get something like that sorted out. But I'm not sure what mechanism it would necessarily be straight off the bat. So,
Elliot Segretti asks, you can't use external 3D tools and you can't use external editing or processing tools. You can composite live action in the UE environment, and you can use UE for titles and credits. You can absolutely use any 3D tool you want, as long as the final render is coming out from UE. So you are fine to use Blender, Maya, 3ds, Houdini, whatever you want, Cinema 4D, Motion Builder, whatever your poison of choice is, as long as it comes into UE and you hit that render button from UE. Yeah, and Voxel Vagrant mentions Final Pixels in Unreal is probably a good thing to write down for whether or not something would pass eligibility on submission. That is absolutely 100% true. And another question, are third-party assets from the marketplace okay to use? I say that's totally cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There are a lot of assets in the marketplace. Use them. If they help your production process, if they make it easier, absolutely use them.
And one thing to note, each month Epic actually releases a set of free assets to the marketplace. So keep an eye out for them. You can sign up to the mailing list and they'll get pinged, hey, these are the free assets for the month. And quite a lot of them, they're not just like small little free assets that usually come out or anything like that. Some of these are like massive examples. Like there was a full city, like old school medieval city that was released quite a while ago. Nature packs, all of that stuff. And adding on to that, it was mentioned in the chat earlier, but Quixel, Megascans and Quixel Bridge are also completely free for people to use within the engine. So don't forget to use them.
Cool. Great. Well, look, I hope this has been a useful session. We'll be running another session in about 3 hours time. So it'll be a repeat of this one. It won't be like a recording and a replay. It will actually be redone so that we can answer certain questions differently. Well, sorry, new questions. You know what I mean.
Actually, there's a really good question.
Oh, sorry.
No, because it's just popped up. The audio, because you and I have had many conversations about this now.
Am I touching audio?
Does the sound need to be edited in UE4?
So I mean, that's not a stress point.
No.
Like it still needs to be pushed out through it, but Sequencer allows you to run audio tracks straight along it. Generally what you find is certain things are going to be done in Engine, as in like you'll be playing sound cues for certain things, but quite often you'll do the final composition for like say the music piece or something like that will just be imported as a final track that plays over your master sequence. So.
Cool. I think that's pretty much it.
Great. Well, in that case, thank you all very much for coming. My apologies for some of the little technical spots that we had, but hopefully this was at least somewhat informative. I gave you a little bit of a whistle-stop tour of some of the virtual production specific tools. And I hope to see more of you joining the sessions as they progress throughout the next 2 weeks. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, guys.
Take care.
Tell me, is this thing on now? I've been working long like a marathon now. Tying up backwards, making them a bomb now. Tell me, who turned on the alarm now? I got a message when they put it in a song now. I'll see you later, all the haters got it wrong now. We're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We're feeling inside, yeah. We got the power. Yeah, come on. We got the power. Yeah, turn it up. We got the power. Come on, is everybody with me? It's time to get together.